All right. Good morning, Jai Hind, everybody. Welcome to day two of the two and a half front war. India's internal security challenges is brought to you by Indic Researchers Forum, a think tank that aims at bringing out quality research on geopolitics, national security, international relations through a civilizational perspective. To begin with, we have a keynote address by Vice Admiral Deshpande sir. Vice Admiral Deshpande sir has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and is a trained marine and aeronautical engineer. He saw action during 1971 operations. He is an alumnus of National Defense College in New Delhi and recipient of gold medal. He has held important appointments such as Admiral, including head of Naval Dockyard at Vishakhapatnam, controller of warship production and acquisition. He has served on board of directors of Musgon Shipyard, Garden Ridge Shipyard, Indian Register of Shipping and Bharat Electronics. He was awarded Vishishta Seva Medal in 1997, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal in 2007, and Param Vishishta Seva Medal in 2010. Now I request sir to give a keynote address. Over to you, sir. Deshpande, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pulukuri. Firstly, at the outset, I would like to compliment the Indic Researchers Forum for organizing this conference on a very important but not yet much discussed concept of two and a half front war, about which India needs not only to be aware but also be prepared to tackle this kind of a war. It is indeed an honor for me to deliver this keynote address on day two of the conference. I understand that some very important aspects related to the main theme were discussed yesterday, and I'm sure that today too we will have some very interesting speakers. And I'm sure that some pertinent recommendations will emerge, have emerged and will emerge. And I suppose, and I would like to request Indic to take up these with the policy makers. Firstly, this concept of two and a half front war, it's perhaps very clear to the people who are attending this conference, who are participating in such conferences. But for the common man, it's not very clear. What is this? Two front war is very clear to everyone. Yes, on the one hand, you've got a front on Pakistan, on the other side, you've got China. So while people understand these two fronts, they do not understand what this 0.5, the half percent, the half war, 50%, what is that front? Here I would like to narrate a personal experience that I had. As a young four-striper captain, I was deputed to the College of Naval Warfare for 6 months to do a study on naval warfighting at the operational level. And one of the first few speakers was a retired Lieutenant General from the Army. I think Lieutenant General was his name, if I remember correctly. And for 2 days, he spoke to us mainly about the insurgencies in the Northeast and the problems in the internal security problems in Kashmir. Now, imagine for a captain who's just been promoted. I was all of 40-year-old. I didn't really understand. I mean, I was thinking of naval warfighting as something to do with, fighting with warships, fighting with submarines, fighting with fighter aircraft, and so on. I said, what is this? What's he talking about? Insurgency in the Northeast. Believe you me, at the end of his lectures and at the end of that course, that's the first time I realized that there is a war which we have to fight continuously. And it has nothing to do with sailing ships or with flying aircraft or taking tanks across. And that, I believe, is what this conference is about. And this half front is all about. And more about that later. But I believe that this recognition that there is a half front, and that half front is it has got two qualities which are very, very debilitating. One is that it is not something that you fight for 1 month. You can prepare for a 1 month war, you can prepare for a 6 month war. But this is a war that goes on for decades. and it is continuous. And it has no cost to the enemy, and it has tremendous cost to us. And therefore, paying attention to this is fairly important. I also understand that important issues like insurgency, water scarcity, energy security, food security, there's so many important issues out of this which need to be thought about, to be discussed, and solutions found. The importance, for example, of Indo-Pacific region for India, as well as many strategic aspects, should be deliberated and would be deliberated by today's galaxy of experienced speakers. I shall attempt to set the tone for deliberations which would follow in various sessions after this keynote address. Undoubtedly, the threat of two and a half front war is already looming large on us, and its implications for us are not going to be anything other than worrisome. It is therefore right time for us to deliberate on these issues and bring whatever expertise we have to bear on the possible solutions and make some recommendations for the policymakers and the military planners. We are all well aware of the situation in the Ladakh region. China's ploy of keeping us engaged in the so-called land skirmishes is actually in reality diverting our focus and our limited resources away from the Indian Ocean region. And it's for obvious reasons. And that should be quite evident to us. China's policy of encirclement and their string of pearls project have already rung alarm bells for us. Real aim of China's strategy of pushing India's neighboring countries in a deadly debt trap under the garb of investments and Belt and Road initiatives should not fool anyone anymore. Dangers posed to our security because of these debt traps and base grabs should be evident to all of us, and our deliberations must clearly focus on the remedial issues for the remedial measures which we can take for this. In addition, China's foray into Afghanistan, Iran, and Central Asian countries should also be a matter of concern for us. China's Wolfgang diplomacy, efforts to impose psychological, cyber, and space wars on India are worrisome developments. Its hegemonistic behavior in South China Sea, its surreptitious operations in the Indian Ocean region has its own implications for us. On economic front, regional compressions economic pact, which they have entered into, would also pose a threat to India. China's nefarious designs in troubling India on water management would also be an issue which India would need to tackle sooner or later. Sooner, I believe, than later. China sees India as the only obstacle in its path of being the sole regional power and be influencer in the Indian Ocean, in Indo-Pacific and the Asian regions. Thus, it would do everything in its power to keep India destabilized, and both militarily and economically, and undermine India's influence in the region and India's geopolitical standing. This is the first front which we need to worry about and be prepared. On the other hand, on the other front, China and Pakistan nexus is well known to all of us. China's arming of Pakistan with modern weaponry poses grave security threat to India. In addition, China-Pakistan economic corridor would be another headache for us in days to come. Reports related to presence of Pakistani rangers near the Galwan Valley, where we are already facing problems, should also be a matter of concern for us. And as if all this was not enough, Pakistan's now involvement in Afghanistan and its continuous state-sponsored terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir will pose grave security risks for India. Pakistan's involvement in pumping fake Indian currency notes, drugs, illicit arms into India is also not a secret. It's no wonder that Pakistan continues to be on FATF's grey list. Thus, Pakistan playing in tandem with China would be the second front that India needs to be prepared to fight. And finally, coming to the half front which I spoke about initially, insurgency, be it in Jammu and Kashmir, Northeast, or be it in the form of Naxals. And we've got a big Naxal belt starting from Nepal and going right down to Odisha and Andhra. And when I was commanding Naval Dockyard Vizag, once I had driven down in that area, Koraput and so on, and I had the experience of actually being stopped by Naxals on a roadblock. For some reason, I don't know why, but I was let go. So I was quite happy that day. But I've seen how those Naxals live, what they do, and so on. So that is another area of concern. India needs to be prepared to tackle these festering problems using not just military, but political, economic, state machinery, and whenever required, the military. But here I'd like to point out that the half front also needs to cover issues related to water crisis, economic impacts of China-Pakistan nexus, smuggling activities, energy security, and effects of long-term internal instabilities. India thus needs to be fully prepared to tackle all these fronts. The two fronts I spoke to about earlier and the half front now. And we have to do it on our own steam. It should be clear to us with Ukraine situation boiling that Russia may at best stand neutral in Indo-China conflict, and that should worry us. We may also hype a lot about Quad. Even yesterday there was a lot of hype about this Quad. But in short term, how will it help India in fighting the two and a half front war is a million-dollar question. Thus, India needs to become strong economically, militarily, and diplomatically, and not only tackle its own problems, but also give confidence to its neighbors that India can be banked upon as a net security facilitator, if not a provider of security. There are many ways and means to achieve these objectives, but I would refrain from going into the details because there is enough expertise within the country and amongst the speakers here, and they are, to my mind, they are more competent to actually analyze these issues. I'd like to end by saying that deliberations on the concept of two and a half front war are very timely. And I have no doubts that some recommendations, viable recommendations, would come out of the deliberations that would follow. I once again urge Indic researchers to take up these recommendations with the policymakers as they deem fit. I wish you all the very best and thank you for this opportunity for interacting with you. God bless you and God bless our great nation. Thank you and Jai Hind.